Welcome to the wonderful fantasy world. Subscribe now. The Mark of the Two Snakes. The Rebirth of the Godslayer. Volume 1. The Awakening of the Blood Oath. Chapter 2. The Gear Strangulation Order. Rain with a rusty odor trickled through the gaps in the tin roof, splattering onto the floor of the gear workshop and creating mottled watermarks. Aiden stared at the snake-shaped wrench left by his father on the workbench. The pattern of two intertwined snakes on the handle of the wrench flickered faintly in the dim light of the kerosene lamp, as if repeating his mother's dying whispers. When you can see the blood within the gears, go to the misty wasteland to find your father. Just after the third chime of the midnight bell, the sharp sound of breaking glass echoed from the back alley. As Aiden grabbed the wrench and spun around, old Tom came tumbling through the broken window. Blood beads oozed from 3 gear-shaped wounds on his back and dripped onto the ground, eerily converging into a double snake pattern along the brick joints, a forbidden spell symbol he had seen in the church's secret scrolls 3 days ago. They're coming ... double quotes. Old Tom's mechanical dentures emitted a gear-grinding sound as he spoke, a characteristic of survivors of the gear-branding punishment in the previous Divine Throne experiment. Trembling, he handed over a blood-stained gear pocket watch and a crumpled sheepskin map. The coordinates of Bloodsworn blacksmith shop on the inner side of the watch cover were seeping a faint glow. Go to the misty wasteland ... Your father left a war puppet by the ancient tree. It's related to Loren's mechanical heart ... The moment Aiden's fingers touched the watch chain, his father's forging hammer marks suddenly appeared on the metal surface, the symbol of the blacksmith shop where his father crafted hidden spiritual vein equipment for the aliens on the edge of the misty wasteland. As described in Chapter 13 of the prequel, old Tom suddenly grasped his wrist tightly, and the faint light of the approaching gear armor outside the window was reflected in his pupils. The church intends to restart the Divine Throne. They need your blood ... The clicking sound of turning gears came from old Tom's wrist. Aiden's blood-red eyes activated instantaneously, and he saw the self-destruct spell imprinted gears on the inner side of the old man's arm rotating in reverse. The spiritual light seeping from the tooth patterns was identical to the Eternal Silence 17 on the inner side of the inspection team leader's armor in Chapter 3. Get down! Instinctively, he yanked old Tom down. The next second, the gear crossbow arrows that burst through the window grazed his scalp and embedded themselves in the wall. The double snake emblem on the arrow's tail was absorbing old Tom's blood. As the blast wave sent the workbench flying, Aiden noticed that the hidden compartment was already open. A half sheet of sheepskin paper fluttered in the air current. At the edge of the pattern of 2 snakes coiling around a gear, several strands of red hair were firmly stuck to the paper with gear grease. The last memento left in the blacksmith shop when his mother made a gauntlet overnight before being burned. The hands of the pocket watch, for some unknown reason, were now pointing due north, and the star map coordinates on the inner side of the watch cover were precisely the location of the ancient tree formed after Vera was petrified in Chapter 9 of the prequel. Aiden ... double quotes. Old Tom's voice was drowned out by the rumbling of turning gears. Blood, colored lines identical to the church's spell imprint, emerged on his chest. Your father knew the church would come ... Before he could finish, the spell imprint suddenly exploded. Metal fragments, mixed with spiritual vein sparks, etched a warning symbol of the previous Divine Throne experiment on the wall. The last mark engraved on the stone wall before the snake tribe was destroyed during the blood fire siege in Chapter 4 of the prequel. Aiden rolled and evaded in the blast wave, and the wrench accidentally struck the gear mechanism on the wall. The gears in the depths of the hidden compartment suddenly started turning, revealing the remaining pages of his father's diary. On Aiden's 17th birthday, he first used his blood-red eyes to foresee a mining accident, but chose to conceal it. His eyes resemble Eileen's greatly, yet they have an additional silver snake pattern. Is it Loren's curse or Vera's blessing? The sound of the rainstorm pounding on the roof suddenly grew harsh. Aiden heard the familiar gear, rubbing sound approaching from all directions. The ticking of the pocket watch accelerated in sync with his heartbeat. This was the resonance of the two snakes mentioned in his father's diary in chapter 13 of the prequel. When the church's gear legion draws near, the mark transmits danger through the heartbeat. He snatched the map left by old Tom and found that on the reverse side, written in red snake blood, were the words, "The three weaknesses of the Divine Throne's core lie within Loren's mechanical heart, Vera's spiritual vein crystal, and the church's lies." Suddenly, the floor trembled, and 7 gear knights burst through the wall. The silver snake emblems in the center of their breastplates perfectly matched the gear shape of old Tom's wounds. With his blood, red eyes, Aiden saw the spell, imprinted gear chains within their bodies, absorbing spiritual veins. And the numbers on the chain links were exactly those of the alien spiritual veins devoured in the Eternal Silence disaster in chapter 7 of the prequel. The resonance probe raised by the leading knight had a gear structure identical to the spiritual vein strangulation device, designed by Loren in chapter 3 of the prequel. Descendant of the god, Slayer, surrender. The knight's mechanical throat emitted a synthesized voice. The instant the visor opened, Aiden's pupils contracted. The gear-shaped bones of the opponent's lower jaw were characteristic of Loren's mechanical transformation in chapter 5 of the prequel. He suddenly recalled the image hidden in the core of his father's war puppet. The church's high-level members are no longer human. They are the gear prisoners of the Divine Throne. The moment the wrench smashed towards the probe, Aiden attempted to sense the spell imprint with the red snake's spiritual light for the first time. In his blood-colored vision, the gear chain within the knight's body suddenly revealed the remaining pages of Loren's notes. The double snake pattern marked by Loren in the corner of the design drawing during the church's secret meeting in chapter 3 of the prequel. So, every gear spell imprint is engraved with an alien's name. He remembered seeing Sura 001 on the inner side of the inspection team leader's armor, which now corresponded to the gear crack on the knight's chest. Old Tom's corpse was suddenly hoisted up by the spiritual vein siphon, and the resonance probes of the knights hummed in unison. Aiden's blood, red eyes caught the fatal trajectory. The probe would first shatter his scapula, and then crush the pocket watch, the only complete relic his mother had left him. Instinctively, he stuffed the pocket watch into the hidden compartment and flung his father's forging hammer in the opposite direction. Amid the sparks from the collision of gears and spiritual veins, he saw the double snake pattern on the inner side of the watch cover, absorbing his blood droplets. He's activating the secret passage to the ancient tree. The knight captain's voice suddenly distorted into Loren's mechanical tone. Aiden then noticed the gear interface at the back of the opponent's neck, the consciousness connector, implanted when Loren signed a contract with the church in chapter 10 of the prequel. Just as the probe was about to pierce his chest, he suddenly pressed the sheepskin paper against the double snake relief on the wall. The red snake's spiritual light exploded along the lines, revealing a secret passage leading to the misty wasteland. The gears at the entrance of the secret passage suddenly started turning. Just before falling, Aiden grabbed the pocket watch and saw that the hands were already pointing towards the petrified ancient tree in the depths of the misty wasteland. The gear armors of the pursuers got stuck in the entrance, and the light from the resonance probes illuminated the church flag on their backs. Beneath the emblem of a silver snake coiling around a gear, the floor plan of the destroyed snake tribe in chapter 4 of the prequel was faintly visible. The damp air from underground, carrying a rusty smell, rushed in. By the faint light of a fire-making implement, Aiden unfolded the map. His father's handwriting was particularly distinct amidst the sound of the rainstorm. No. 37 outpost in the misty wasteland. Activate the gears 3 times with your blood and turn the double snake pattern counter-clockwise. The tooth marks on the edge of the sheepskin paper were identical to those he had seen on the inner side of the inspection team leader's armor, marks of the executors of the Eternal Silence Purification Plan. In the previous Divine Throne experiment, the pocket watch suddenly emitted a buzzing sound, and the ticking of the gears was intermingled with the sound of his mother's heartbeat. the spiritual vein resonance frequency secretly recorded by his father when his parents met in the gear black market in chapter 11 of the prequel. Aiden's fingertips ran across the watch cover, and he suddenly noticed that the double snake pattern engraved on the inner side was absorbing his bloodstains, revealing the same blood-colored lines as when Vera was petrified in chapter 9 of the prequel. The sound of colliding gear armors came from above. Aiden reached into the hidden compartment for the broken piece of his father's snake-headed sword. The notch on the blade edge exactly matched the broken snake-headed sword of Vera in chapter 5 of the prequel. He suddenly remembered old Tom's hesitant words before his death, the legends about the Bloodsworn blacksmith, and the prophecy of the return of the two snakes secretly circulated among the alien caravans. All these were now connected by the ticking of the pocket watch. They don't want to capture me alive. They want my blood. Aiden stared at the gear coordinates on the map, thinking of the blood samples collected by the inspection team. The two-snake blood activator required to start the core of the Divine Throne in Loren's design drawing in chapter 3 of the prequel. The rainstorm washed away the bloodstains in the workshop, but couldn't erase the double snake pattern engraved on the wall by his father, a mark of his 10-year watch on the edge of the misty wasteland. When the first beam of searchlight swept across the entrance of the secret passage, Aiden finally understood why his father had left half a sheet of sheepskin paper. The pattern of two snakes coiling around a gear was both the chain with which Loren imprisoned Vera and the symbiosis code left by Vera for her descendants. He tightly clutched the pocket watch, allowing blood droplets to fall between the gear patterns, and watched as the mark of the two snakes fully emerged on the map for the first time. It was the energy trajectory of the Battle of the Two Snakes 100 years ago, and also the gear noose he was about to step onto, leading to the truth. The rumbling of mechanical operation came from the depths of the secret passage, resonating with Aiden's heartbeat. He knew that old Tom's sacrifice, his father's diary, and his mother's red hair were all guiding him towards the misty wasteland. And the gear hearts beneath the church knight's armors, those mechanical devices driven by alien spiritual veins, would eventually reveal the cruelest truth of the previous Divine Throne experiment in the light of the mark of the two snakes. The gears strangled not only the spiritual veins, but also the possibility of coexistence between humans and aliens. The rain continued to rage outside the workshop. Aiden's blood dripped onto the map, dyeing the coordinates of the Bloodsworn blacksmith shop red-silver. That was his father's hiding place in the misty wasteland, and also the secret stronghold where signals were transmitted through the sound of gear, knocking in chapter 13 of the prequel. When the pursuers' gear boots entered the workshop, all they saw was the extinguished fire and the unfinished gear gauntlet on the workbench, with a double snake pattern identical to Aiden's mark engraved on the inner side. The first weapon his father had prepared for him to oppose the Divine Throne. The hands of the pocket watch suddenly broke, but pieced together the direction of the ancient tree in Aiden's palm. He reached for his mother's old item in the hidden compartment, and a piece of snake-scale armor fragment suddenly grew hot, presenting the scene before Vera was petrified in chapter 9 of the prequel. She handed the jade pendant to his grandfather, and a blood-colored leaf fell on the gear, forming a pattern identical to his mark. "So I should have embarked on this path long ago," Aiden murmured, clenching the broken piece of the snake-headed sword, and walked towards the darkness in the depths of the secret passage. The sound of turning gears behind him echoed the awakening of the two snakes in his blood. This episode ends here. The next episode will be more exciting. Subscribe now.